Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar, which is Cybersecurity 101, Can You Spot a Phishing Email? Leading today's session will be Maurice Alfonso, who is Information Security Lead at InfoExchange. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge the Ghana people, who are the traditional custodians of the land that I'm currently on in Adelaide, and also to acknowledge the traditional custodians and owners of the land wherever you may be joining us from in Australia or New Zealand. My name is Grant Smith. I'm the Communications Manager at Connecting Up and TechSoup New Zealand. A little bit about our presenter, Maurice. Maurice is Information Security Lead at InfoExchange, where she leads information security activities and initiatives across the organization. She has a huge amount of experience and collaborates with internal stakeholders across the organization on the development and implementation of information security systems that are aligned to the relevant international standards. Some exciting news today is that we will have live captioning for those of you who would like to take advantage of it. Thank you to Deaf Children Australia who have provided the captioning today. You'll see in the chat that I've just shared a link. If you would like to use live captioning, please click on that link now, and what you'll find is that it'll open another browser window. You will need two browser windows, the one that you can see the presentation in, and then the other that you can see captioning in. If you have any issues, please let me know through the question panels and I will see if I can help. Please note that today's session is being recorded and you will receive access to the recording in the next day or two. If you have any other technical issues, please let me know about those in the questions panel, but keep in mind that most of them will be resolved if you close any unnecessary browsers or other programs that you're using, because generally speaking, the issues tend to be around internet bandwidth. Another fix is to leave and re-enter the session. And if anything else, if you need to do anything else, please message me. Look, that's all of our housekeeping. I would now like to hand you over to Maurice.
Great. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Grant, for that introduction, and welcome to this webinar on cybersecurity essentials to keep data safe. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land that I am on today, the Wurundjeri people. I would also like to pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Our agenda for today, a view of current cybersecurity threats facing organizations in Australia, the top 5 things all not-for-profit staff must know to keep their organization's data safe, a high-level overview of the measures every organization should have in place, and some resources for yourself and your organization, and then we'll get into some live question and answer. Information security practices are no longer a nice to have. Given the increasing nature of our digital footprint and increasing threats, we must build security resilience into our organizations. The security has been in the headlines every month with a number of organizations across all sectors of the economy being affected. What you see on this slide here is a view of some of the headlines within the community services sector. So on the top left, Uniting Care Queensland had an attack on some of its IT systems and had to resort to manual workarounds because their IT systems were not accessible after the attack. On the top right, Oxfam had a donor data breach where data of over 1 million Australians was disclosed. On the bottom left, there was an incident involving a caseworker who worked at a community services organisation and had access to an IT system provided by the Department of Health and Human Services. After leaving the position, his access to that system was not revoked, and thereafter he accessed confidential information related to children and committed sex offences. And the last one there on the bottom right is a news item from January, where the Prime Minister indicated increasing frequency of attacks in Australia. So as you can see from this snapshot, the impacts of incidents vary from data being inaccessible because it's locked up due to ransomware. In other cases, personal information is disclosed via a data breach. A key message is that the human element is significant in the delivery of security in today's organizations. So the human element is that people component. For example, for staff to be aware of certain processes on how to securely share information or how to use technology securely by creating a good, strong password. Security behaviors and the culture and sentiment on security within an organization is greatly influenced by you and your perception of risk. And most importantly, these perceptions can be changed. Security is really everybody's responsibility in an organization. Okay, let's get into the top 5 things you must know to keep your organization's data safe. The first one here is know how to spot a phishing email. Phishing emails are sent with the aim of tricking the recipient into clicking on links or giving up their personal information. And if you look at the example on this slide, there's a staff member who received this email about messages that could not be delivered by Office 365 into their mailbox. And they clicked on the review button, which is the big red button at the bottom, was presented with what looked like a standard login page to SharePoint with their username already populated. They popped in their password into the password box and clicked login. At that point, they'd given up their password. Now, fortunately, in this case, multi-factor authentication, which is that additional factor in addition to a password, was in use and account access was blocked. And the staff member was still asked to change their password after, and they had also not been to phishing awareness training before. So this is one that they fell for. But if you look at the telltale signs in the email, the from email address looks suspect, as well as the link at the bottom just above the review, the review box there. Doesn't look correct. So these are some of the telltale signs in emails on how to spot a phishing email. The second example here was an email request received by a payroll department, and it appeared to come from a staff member requesting a change of bank details. Now, the payroll department initially responded, saying, yes, please send me your new bank details, and they didn't notice the from email address. The second email on the bottom there was received by payroll with the new bank details, at which point they realized, due to the grammar in the email, that this was not legitimate. This is a useful poster which highlights the general attributes of a phishing email. Note that not all these 7 points would apply, because phishing emails can have different intents with the example we just saw. One of them was trying to get someone's password into Office 365 so that they could access information. And the other one was trying to get, a bank detail changed so that they could divert their funds, divert a staff member's funds to a fraudulent bank account. So with phishing, the attacker uses social engineering principles to trick the person into performing an action. These principles may be a sense of urgency or scarcity, for example. And if we look at the screenshot here, you can see the messages about being eligible for a tax refund. I mean, who wouldn't like that? So it would be really enticing to click on that link, but it's really important to take note of the signs within the email and identify whether or not it is legitimate. So hovering your mouse over the link and making sure that that link doesn't look suspect. ato.gov.au.com, that's definitely not a government website. So these are some of the things that you could look for to recognize a phishing email. Okay, now we've got a quick poll. Thank you, Grant, for popping the poll up. And the question is, has your organization or have you been affected by data theft or IT system compromise? So it's just a yes, no answer, just to get a feel for the audience and their experience with data breaches. So when you're ready, Grant, love to hear the responses.
Okay, so we've got, thankfully, 66% say no, but 34% say yes. So that's quite a few, hey?
Okay, yeah, that is quite a few. Well, good that majority are, there's a fortunate few who have not been affected. And putting into practice the top 5 things we're going to talk about here would help to ensure that, your organization's data, as well as your personal data, is kept safe. Okay, thank you for that, Grant. All right, this is a link, and I'll pop open a window in due course. This is a link from cyber.gov.au, where they've got a phishing quiz, and I highly encourage you to go and have a look at this quiz. We'll step through an example now. This is the same website. You can just go on there, and it's got 4 questions. Step through and identify whether or not you're good at picking out a phishing email. So I'll give you a couple of seconds. Just take a look at this email. and see if you can pick out any of the telltale signs that would indicate whether it's real or whether it is a scam. Okay, firstly, I'd say Australian government asking me for details such as my tax file number in an email. That doesn't sound right. Looking at the email, it's not, reference to me. It's just a generic email. There's a couple of typos there. It doesn't look right. They're also asking me to attach a copy of my driving license and my passport. I don't think so, not in response to an email. So I'm going to say that's a scam. So we step through. There it is. It's not personalized, asking you to provide your personally identifiable information, particularly your details like your tax file number and your passport. In general, government agencies would never ask you to provide this sort of detail via email. And inconsistencies in language, font, another indication as well. There we go. Again, inconsistencies and typos. Okay, there's a few more examples on this quiz. There's 4, and like I said, I highly encourage you to go and visit this website and take a look and put your phishing skills to the test. All right, the second point is to know where to store sensitive information. The sensitive data, such as health data and client records, should only be stored in certain places within your organization. For example, client data should be in a client and case management system. And if your organization has not made it clear where you should store certain types of data so that it's protected, then you must ask. A number of data breaches happen due to human error and people not storing information where it should be stored and so that it can be appropriately secured. Information is a key asset that an organization has, and it has value, so it must be protected. And this is particularly true for sensitive information like health data and client records. Many organizations we work with only store client data in a client and case management system. If it's stored on your laptop or on your machine, it may not be safe if that laptop is stolen or lost, for example. So ensure you're storing this type of information where it must be stored. And if you're not sure, please do ask. The third point is on using good password practices. Now, a good password may be based on a phrase that you know. You could compose a password by picking out the first letter of each word, capitalizing some and adding in some digits. And it's important to keep your personal information and details out of the password. It's also really important not to reuse passwords, because if a password is compromised from one system and has been reused on another, it's easy for an attacker to get into this other system. If you need to write down passwords, store them securely, not on a post-it note on your screen, for example. And if you have too many passwords to remember, consider a good password manager or talk to your IT team about getting one for your organization. There's a good number out there. The second point there is on multi-factor authentication. Now, this is the practice of using another factor in addition to a password to log into an account. And it is a best practice. If you look at the screen here, there's the screenshots of Microsoft Authenticator, which show you like what an example of a two-factor is. So you'd get a code on your phone, you'd log in with your password and this additional code that you'd get on your phone. And if you don't have multi-factor authentication implemented, again, you should speak to the person in charge of IT and ask them why you haven't got it, because multi-factor authentication has proved to reduce the occurrence of security incidents and data breaches. And last point there, it's best not to share IT system accounts and passwords, but understandably, this is not always possible in certain organizations. So if you do share passwords, be cautious of how you do that. Make sure that the password's only shared with the person who needs to have it to access a certain account. And if somebody who knows the password leaves the organization, for example, make sure that the password is changed. Okay, the fourth one, keeping your device secure. And this ranges from physical protections to making sure that you're installing what you should install on your device. Physically protecting it means not leaving it in the car for others to see. It's also a good practice to lock your screen when you step away from your device, because in this case, any information you have open is protected and the access to your device is also protected. At this time as well, many people are working remotely, and if your PC is used by your children, be aware of what they do on the PC. If they install software such as games, sometimes these can have malicious software components installed as well. If they're accessing games online, here again, there is the risk of visiting websites or clicking on web links that could have malicious software or malware, as we call it, downloaded onto your machine. We've seen an increase in the number of organizations who report a security breach because they're using an infected home PC without appropriate protections. And if you're using your own device, the concept of bring your own device or BYOD, such as a mobile phone or other device for work, make sure that it has appropriate protections as listed here. It's got a passcode, you're updating it as you should. And also in terms of information that you should be storing on it, make sure that you're only storing information on it that your organization has approved or is comfortable for you to store there. And if you're not sure, please ask. And lastly, of the top 5, report anything that you're not sure about or seems suspect. Now, security incidents are adverse events which pose a threat to an organization's information systems and services, and they can stem from a variety of sources. So, for example, any unfamiliar activity that might be on your device might indicate there's malicious software on it. Disclosure of information, personal details about a client, for example, to somebody who shouldn't have had access to that information. Lost devices or removable media with the organization's information is another example. And the last one there is also in terms of physical presence of people within an office premise. Probably not so relevant now with many people working remotely, but continues to be relevant as we move back into the office. And if there's unfamiliar activity on your devices, your IT team could generally check access logs, reset your password to make sure that your password has been changed and is not compromised, and run security scans on your device. And lastly, ensure you know who to report potential security incidents to at your organization. If you see something, it's best to say something so that it can be triaged and assessed as to whether it is really a security incident or not. Okay, some key takeaways for you. The first 3 are really for you within an organization, and the last 4 are what your organization should have in place and that you should be aware of. And if they don't, please ask. So the first one there is about using strong, unique passwords, as we talked through. Beware of phishing emails. Phishing really is a prevalent attack vector that is used to get into an organization. It's really a wide attack surface. If an attacker can compromise an organization just by sending an individual an email, that's really an easy in point for them. So we need to build up that human firewall and make people aware of how to recognize phishing emails. Also noting that email addresses can be spoofed and appear to come from people you know. So at times, if a request seems suspect or you're just not sure, validate the request. Pick up the phone and say, did you send me this email? Did you want this request fulfilled? Thirdly, fraudsters can create websites that look like the real website of a bank or one of your suppliers. So if you receive an email and there's a link in it, it's a good thing not to follow the link in the email and go directly, for example, to your bank's website. Now, the last 4, like I said, are important for your organization to have in place. Is there an understanding of where you should store sensitive data? The use of multi-factor authentication on accounts that have important data or sensitive data, critical IT systems, as we call it. And they should have security policies in place that you should be aware of to explain to you your obligations. And the last one there is, who's the contact point if you need to report something suspicious? So those last 4 would be a good takeaway for you to take back and have the conversation in your organization as to what do we have in place on these ones. Okay, this is a listing of some useful resources on reporting scams, cybercrime, guidance on identity theft, as well as checking if your personal details have been compromised in a data breach. The Digital Transformation Hub also has some useful guides and expert consultation advice available, and you are strongly encouraged to visit this. These are the second last and third last links there. And in addition, there's also some Microsoft Office training options that you may find useful on the hub as well. If you found this content useful, please encourage other people to come for the next cybersecurity webinar. We'll be running these monthly via Connecting Up, and the next one's on Thursday, the 14th of October at 11 a.m. Okay, thank you very much, and now happy for some questions.
No questions just at the moment. Please do take the opportunity to pop them in quickly, everyone. We will hang around for a couple of minutes to give a chance. Maurice, I find that very interesting when you were talking about how websites and various things can be duplicated. I went to a presentation on cybersecurity, and the presenter was talking about how you can, even if you're looking to access people's information, you can even order campaigns on the dark web and have specialists work and create things that look almost perfect.
Yeah, that's right. It's really a business model they've got going, Grant. You know, it's as a service. You know, just how we have software as a service where we deploy software to organizations. They've got their own ransomware as a service models with affiliates and so on. So it's a whole business model. And so we have to up our game and make sure that we keep ourselves safe.
That's right, absolutely. Nicholas, I've got a question. Should we worry about the, there might be a typo there, you might need to enter it again, PWNED website breaches? Maybe just, I'm not sure what that, unless that makes sense.
Is that, have I been pawned? Is that, have I been pawned?
Pawned website?
Have I been pawned? Yeah, so that's a website you can go to and enter in, you know, your email address, and it'll tell you if your email has been, or all your personal information has been compromised, and particularly, you know, what information has been compromised, and give you recommendations. If your password has been compromised, you change your password. If your personal details have been compromised, they may be used in, you know, targeted phishing emails. It just gives you an idea of the data breaches that are occurring and where you need to exercise caution. I hope that answers.
I think what it must, I'm not aware of it, but there must have been a breach of the Have I Been Pawned website. I'm not aware of that, but he's asking if we should worry about something like that.
Okay, my understanding of that website is that it gives you links to websites that have been compromised, where your personal information may be exposed.
Okay. I'm receiving many scam texts on my business mobile device, perhaps up to 6 to 10 a day. That's a lot. Maria is asking, have you any advice?
Scams on your mobile device?
Yeah, and so many of them.
I would say the second link up there, and I've done a few of these myself, where you can report a scam. So if you go onto that Scam Watch website, it does take a bit of your time, but you know, it's generally quite a good thing to do, because if you can report a scam and it can benefit others, then that's one thing I would recommend. Also, the other thing is obviously don't respond to them if they're asking you for particular details, or they're doing it via voice. Obviously, just exercise caution with that. But I think reporting a scam is one of the best things we can do, because having oversight of that and helping others would be a good way to prevent the scams, you know, going further.
Fantastic. And I guess if it got really, really bad, you would sort of do a cost-benefit analysis and potentially change your mobile number if you were just getting spammed all the time.
Yeah, true. Yeah, you could do that too.
Jeffrey is asking, when you have a workforce who are not tech savvy, what examples of multi-factor authentication methods could you recommend?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's multi-factor authentication also could happen via SMS. I've also seen instances where organizations receive a second factor via email. So that is an option, because, you know, generally having a second factor is better than not having any at all. So those are the two that I would suggest, although, you know, there is the general industry thought that SMS is no longer secure for a second factor, but I would say it's better than having none. Of course, the best is to have the apps on the smartphone, but I can understand that, you know, for a workforce who is not tech savvy, the options might be the SMS or code via email.
Fantastic. Noel wanted to share that wanted to share with staff that DCA had a ransomware attack many years ago when they were offline for days.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Jane has said, can you recommend a response analogy to use to illustrate to those that want to use their work email versus a generic email on collateral/website?
Sorry, an analogy?
Yeah, so I think what we're talking about is people who want to use their work email rather than a generic email on
On
collateral or a
non-work
website.
sites or
Yeah,
non-work. Yeah, I would, that goes back to that point about having security policies in place, so an acceptable use policy. If staff are not aware and understand, their obligations and what the organization expects, then you wouldn't blame them for doing that. But if there's a clear expectation and this is what we expect work email to be used for, and this is where you shouldn't use it, that's what I would say, going back to that first premise of having a policy in place as a good governance mechanism would be one to start with.
I'm not altogether clear on what that question means, but I think it might also potentially be meaning if you use your own individual work email address on a website that might have a huge audience, you might be sort of asking for trouble, I guess, because if it's the homepage of your company website and then you have your personal work or your individual work email address,
Oh,
you
right.
might be making
Listed
a
on a,
target out of yourself.
oh,
And how would
okay,
you
yeah,
explain to people to not do that?
yeah,
Small
yeah.
fish attracting big fish or something.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, generally you would have, maybe a generic email on your website, but if that's the case and it is your email address on there, then you'd require vigilance with the emails that come through. And I would say, of course, on the technical side, making sure that your email spam filters and that sort of thing are kept up to date would also be a good thing to do.
Yeah. Okay, but it could be asking for trouble. I think that's probably true.
Yeah.
Any more questions, everybody? I think we're almost at the end. This is last chance for a question if you want to ask one. No, I think we're done. Look, Maurice, that was a really, really good presentation. I found it really valuable. I can see by the number of questions and comments, everybody else did too. I would like to thank you for presenting today, and we'll look forward to the next session. I would encourage everybody who's listening to let everybody know that this is a free series. Please encourage your colleagues and your friends to attend, and hopefully we will see you at another session in the future. Aside from
Great.
that,
Thank
I
you.
think I'll finish
Thank
up
you very
and
much.
pleasure. Have a
Thank you,
great day,
guys.
everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.